You are listening to the Seven Rivers Student Ministry Podcast, a ministry of Seven Rivers Church in Citrus County, Florida. Here at SRSM, we believe that all students are lovable through a relationship with Jesus. Visit our website at sevenrivers.org/students. Hey guys, this is Mikey Puckett with Seven Rivers Student Ministry. You're listening to episode 15, Hope Even in Death. This story comes to us from my friend and mentor, Todd Veliber. He has 4 boys. He lives in Tallahassee, Florida, is the youth pastor at Wildwood Church. And I know Todd because I went to college in Tallahassee at Florida State, and I plugged in at Wildwood Church, and then I started volunteering and then eventually became an intern with the youth ministry. And so got to get to know Todd and work closely with him, and Todd has a lot of dirt on me. College Mikey was definitely a handful, and I'm sure if you guys ever reach out to him, he'll be able to give you some pretty funny stories. But Todd was gracious to me and kind to me, and he discipled me, and he poured into me, and he showed me what does it look like to live a life of discipleship, live a life where you lay down your life for your students, and you lay down your life for the glory of God. And so I'm so thankful for that. I've been able to learn from Todd and grow in maturity in that. And in a lot of ways, who I am today has a lot to do with Todd Veliber's influence on me and leadership in my life. I've always loved that Todd is so passionate about proclaiming the gospel in his life and in his death. In all things that he does, Todd really does embody the by life or by death motto, where at all costs he wants God to be glorified. And so I'm so excited that you guys are going to get to hear from him and a piece of his story, because you really are, right now you're going to be listening to someone who really does believe in this fully and has been willing to give up everything to follow Jesus at all costs, to make his name known and to bring him glory. And so without further ado, Todd, thank you so much for being brave and courageous and sharing your story with us. Thank you for being willing to, be open and honest. And your story is a blessing and a gift. And I love you, man, and I'm so thankful for you.
Hey, Seven Rivers. My name is Todd Veliber, and I am the student pastor at Wildwood Church in Tallahassee, Florida. Interestingly, where Mikey was a college student and an intern of mine in the student ministry for many, many years. And I am just honored and to be able to share a little bit with you some of my story. Mikey asked if I could talk a little bit about some of the pain of my life, and then said, can you do it in 5 minutes? Well, the reality is it would take a lot longer than 5 minutes to talk about all the pain of my life. But I figured I'd share one story with you, and if I get the chance, I'd love possibly to share another. Back when I was finishing seminary, I got a phone call that my grandfather in California wasn't doing well. Now, we had watched kind of a little bit of decline in his health, but still was kind of holding strong. And then it seemingly started to turn and deteriorate pretty rapidly. And this was challenging for me on many levels. One, I was at the time in Birmingham, Alabama, and so California's a long, long way from there. And so I let my professors know, and I booked a ticket to get out there just as soon as my last final exam for that semester was over, but also told them if things got worse that I would leave faster, and kind of figured, you know what, even if I don't do well or don't finish out, it's more worth it for me to get out there there and be with my grandfather. And so God was gracious, allowed me to finish my semester, and then hopped on a plane and got out there. And I'll be honest, I wasn't prepared for kind of what came next, because honestly, up until that point of my life, at that time I was probably 25-ish, maybe a little younger. I just hadn't experienced a whole lot of pain that I can really remember, and most certainly hadn't experienced walking with a loved one through a really challenging time. And so I got out there, met my aunt and my grandmother, and we headed to the hospital. And I was walking down the hallway and remember glancing into a room and seeing a gentleman laying in the bed, and kept walking until my grandmother stopped me and said, "Hey, that's your grandfather's room." And I couldn't believe it. I walked in to see just a shell of a man, the person that was my grandfather. He was in a coma, and his body was just withering away. And it was tough. It was tough to hold back the emotions of that moment of seeing this man that had been a hero to me my entire life, and been such a great godly man and a good friend and an amazing grandfather, just kind of non-existent. They gave me a few minutes just alone with him, and I sat there and held his hand and just started talking with him, praying with him. I don't know, honestly, on the spiritual side of things or even the medical side of things, how all that works. I don't know what your mind receives when you're in a coma. But I just kind of holding back and crying through that moment, and just kind of fighting through my own feelings and fears, and just starting to experience a real deep level of pain that I hadn't felt before, knowing that I was going to lose him. And had the chance to, again, just spend time with him, pray with him, and then said, "Hey, we'll be coming back tomorrow." Well, it was later that afternoon when we got a phone call from the hospital. It was actually from my cousin who works at the same hospital, and he said, "Hey, Grandpa has passed away." And man, I was absolutely devastated and started to feel pain on the inside like I had never felt before. And on the one hand, so grateful to God that he gave me that one last moment with him. It, again, was really hard to process. I'd never lost anyone that I loved before. This was the first death, especially of someone close to me, that I had ever experienced. And was able to stay out there with my grandmother and my family out there, and help prepare for his funeral and for when the rest of the family could come out there. But I tell you what, there's hope even in death, especially comforting knowing that my grandfather knew and loved Jesus, was with Jesus in heaven. And I just, in those moments, felt such comfort and such peace, knowing the promises that he was not experiencing pain on earth anymore, that his body had been healed and restored, and that he was with Jesus. But I'll tell you what, death isn't easy, and the pain of losing a loved one isn't easy, but there is hope in Jesus. And if anything helps throughout this story, I pray that it would be, no matter what losses you've found in your life, maybe it has been the loss of a loved one, and maybe it's been hard for you to understand or even make sense of. I just pray and hope that you would turn to Jesus and trust that he will walk with you. Even though we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, the psalmist writes, we don't have to be afraid, because he's with us. So take heart, turn to him, and trust him. Hey, love you guys. Excited to have a chance to share a little bit of my story with you.
Thank you for listening. If you would like to hear more stories and follow our devotions, you can go to www.sevenrivers.org/by life or by death. You are loved and you matter.